Welcome back to another episode of Nourish the Mind, where this program speaks about the mind, the body, and the spirit, that all three come together to bring us closer to alignment. If you have been with me for a while, thank you guys for your continuous support. And if you're new to this channel, welcome, and I hope that you will stay. All right, so for this week's topic, we're going to talk about being prepared. Slow down, hold on, take a breath. Being prepared can mean so many different things to different people, depending on where you're at and what you're looking to achieve, your goals, your desire, your aspiration. But the essence of being prepared still remains the same. The essence hasn't been taken away. It still remains the same, which means that preparation requires some level of work, some level of thought, some level of acquiring certain stuff, whatever it is to you that you need to get for that particular situation. And I can throw some analogies there. Whether you're going to be traveling, whether you're going to be taking on a new promotion, you might have to do a certificate or a degree or something to get to that particular level. But whatever it is to you, there's an element of preparation that is required. And the essence, no matter how we take it and switch it and turn it, it still remains the same. Even entering into a new relationship or moving to a new area, sometimes we have to do our research to find out if that area is ideal for me to move to. We have to a little bit and do our own little investigation, and we need to acquire certain things as we go along to make that transition much more smoothly and go through with less hiccups. In a relationship, entering into a new relationship, and I am no expert on topics, guys. I'm still learning as I go, and I'm still sharing the information that some others might lack or some others might be looking for, and they happen to come across this channel. So entering into a new relationship, sometimes we enter into a relationship blindly because we're entering with all these expectations in our mind of what this process is going to give us or what we can get out of this relationship. And sometimes we're like, oh, we have finally found the one. But there is so many key things that goes into the process that we might lose sight of. We might have to ask ourselves some tough and hard questions. And even though we want to get to the sweet spot, the good spot real quick, where we want to be in the middle, we want to be in it, we want to be settled in it. But there's some groundwork, a lot of groundwork that needs to be done in order for us to get there. And sometimes some of the hardest things that we need to ask ourselves is this the situation for me? Is this for me? Is this person for me? Or is our values aligned? Do we see things similarly? There's so many things that we need to ask ourselves now in the beginning before we start to ask ourselves in the middle or towards the end. Then there's a lot more baggage and emotional distress that's there. So it is important for us, guys, to be prepared. And sometimes we become prepared by being in that quiet place, that quiet zone, that's spending that alone time. Sometimes we can get that alone time and we might think that it is God's way of punishing us because we're isolated. Or we can look at it from a perspective that, oh, I'm so lonely, I don't want to be lonely right now. So we'll fill that gap with different things depending on what that thing means to us, whether it can be substance, putting anybody in that space, filling it with external things, the internet, all kinds of things. Just filling that space with whatever we can fill that space with, because we're afraid of being in that space and to find out what that space means to us. There is so much things that we can learn in that quiet little space and spending that quiet time. That's the time when we can buckle down and ask ourselves some hard question. That's the time then we can listen and wait for God to give us the right answer, to ask, is this situation for me? Is this new venture for me? Am I the right person for this assignment? It's just being honest with oneself and be honest with where you're at the end of the day. Nobody can take that away from you. When you're 100% truly seen, which means that you allow yourself to be honest with you, sometimes that's where growth starts to spring, because that is you stepping into a new phase of self. You're stepping into a phase where boundaries are now being set. You're stepping into a phase where if something is definitely not for you, then you're not gonna accept it. You're stepping into a phase where you set standards and you're gonna keep that. You're stepping into a phase where you're protecting your space. You're stepping into a phase where you're giving yourself that grace. It's okay if something is not for you. It's okay if you're not there yet. It's giving yourself that compassion in those moments to say, there is more that needs to be done. It's like creating a work of art or whatever that creation means to you. And I just say about making certain transition. You want to know that things are being put together the right way to make things move more smoothly. So creating that project or that work of art, it's not something that's to be rushed or just push out. It's something that takes time, it takes effort, it takes analyzing, it takes crafting the right way, whatever that thing means to you. Everybody is different. Everybody has their own things going on. But wherever you are right now, if you're at a crossroad and you need to make a decision, a life-changing decision, then you'll know what I mean. Then you'll know that it's not an impulsive decision. It can't be a decision that you're going to make from a place of rush. It has to be a decision from a place of divine order, which means it takes a little bit more time. It takes a little bit more grace. It takes a little bit more space. It takes a little bit more awareness. It takes a little bit more understanding of the situation. It takes a little bit more thoughts. If you're at that place, that crossroad in life, then this video is for you. Everything is gonna be for everybody, depending on where you're at. So this video is all about being prepared. That situation there is some bigger situation that requires a life-changing decision, which means that it takes preparation. It's not something that we just rushed into. And back to that quiet space that I was talking about, that quiet space, and I think that we all gonna experience it at some level, at some point in our life. We're gonna be drawn to that space where we find ourselves alone, whether we're coming out of a relationship, we lost our job, or our kids have grown and they've departed, they have left, and now the house is quiet, or a loved one has passed, or something, a ailment, a sickness. There's something that is going to bring us into that quiet space at some point in our life, and it's going to be like a crossroad. What do I do now? Where do I go from here? In those spaces, that's where growth happens. That's when we start to ask ourselves tough questions. And that's when we wait for God's divine answer. Maybe He's telling you that, you need to sit a little longer. Maybe He's telling you that you need to be a little bit more humble. Maybe He's telling you that you need to make that decision now. Maybe He's going to tell you that that person is the right person for you, Maybe He's going to tell you that that person is not the right person for you. Maybe He's going to tell you that no, it's time for you to take a leap of faith. No, it's time for you to take action. But in those little quiet space, at whatever level we are in life and it comes to us, that's when growth really springs. That's when real decisions are made. And that's when life is being impacted. And that's our season of being prepared for our divine assignment. You know, sometimes we go through life, and a lot of people will go through life and they're just shooting because they know exactly what they want to do. They know exactly where they need to be. There's some people in a phase where they're struggling to get there. They might have an idea, but they don't have a clear grasp of the map. You know, they need a little bit more assistance. And there's just some people that's just lost in this world. You know, they're lost to their purpose. They're lost to their existence. They're lost to the meaning of life. They're lost to, you know, they're just lost. They're just wanderers out there in the world. And then there's those that are struggling to find answers out there in the world. And there's just those who already know and they're going through. And I believe that for those who already know and they're going through, I believe that they have like a stronger obligation or a bigger assignment, because they're the ones that know we can look up to as icons for some, or, you know, as role models for some, as mentor for some, as counselors for some, as healers for some, as teachers for some, as leaders for some. There's so many titles that we can put on it for some, because they're the ones that seem to have situation figured out or seem to be on the right track, and you're here struggling, and, you know, you're looking for them to assist you, you know, with the path that is right, or assist you with getting stuff clearer. You know, I just believe that there's more weight on those people and they have a bigger assignment. They might not see it that way, but that's, you know, how I view it, or, oh, you know, some people might view it. So it is important for us to sit in those quiet spaces and those quiet time. And that's how we are going to learn, guys. That's how I have learned this far. You know, my brain kind of work different. It's always been a struggle with me with a lot of things, to navigate a lot of things. And I speak about the issue of trauma, because trauma do affect our brain in different ways. A lot of us might not talk about this. We might just go through life and zip it, and you'll hear that, oh, just leave the past behind. Don't talk about certain stuff. Just go through. But sometimes when you dive into a lot of things, there's so many little lessons to be learned. And then you understand why a thing is the way it is, you know, and you understand why, you just understand a little bit better when time you sit in certain moments and you really reflect. So sometimes use that little quiet time to reflect. It's okay to reflect, you know. Sometimes in order for us to put the puzzle together, we have to go back to the beginning. It's okay to go back to the beginning. A lot of us are afraid to go back to the beginning. We're afraid to look back in our mind to see what that beginning was teaching us or was supposed to teach us. But it is okay to go back. It is okay to look back. It is okay to analyze things from different perspective, because sometimes when we look at the puzzle of how we start the puzzle leading up to where we can say, oh, this is where I went wrong. This is a piece that I put there that was not supposed to be there. You know, when we look at things from different perspective and different angles, sometimes that's how the answers really start to emerge, and that's how the answers really start to come. So this video is centered around being prepared, and being prepared in that quiet time. The last week video spoke about, you know, what silence can teach you. And sometimes silence is preparing you, you know, for a bigger assignment, or silence is preparing you to where you need to be. But it always starts with us asking ourselves some tough questions, you know. And a lot of people go through life. This is just an example, and they live in this ease, which means they go through life living in discomfort. They're never truly happy. They're never truly aligned. They're never truly fulfilled because they're living in a way that something is off, but they haven't really taken that time to sit and ask themselves some hard question to find out how to correct it, how to align it, what changes need to be made. Even in the human body itself, sometimes we go through life and our body is in such dis-ease. And some of us who are, more conscious will say, you know what, I need to go to the doctor, or I need to seek healing, whether it's going to be coming from God, whether it's going to be you going to a doctor, whether it's going to be you going to a healer, whether it's going to be you going to a counselor, whether it's going to be you seeking therapy. There's so many different things regarding where we are and the level of healing that our mind and body needs. And for some of us, we'll acknowledge that we're living in a state of dis-ease. And sometimes in order to correct that dis-ease, it's gonna require us going to the doctor. It might require us seeking a counselor. It might require us getting spiritual healing, whether from prayer or fasting. It's gonna require us taking action, and to correct anything, it's not always easy. Sometimes it's you hearing certain things that you didn't want to hear, but you needed to hear it, And I applaud and I appreciate people that can say, you're going the wrong way, or maybe it's best that you sit down and, do this, that way, or whatever. Sometimes not necessarily telling you what to do exactly, but sometimes telling you that you're wrong. Sometimes we have to appreciate people in our lives that can see you going the wrong way and hung there on and say, there's a roadblock down there. Don't keep going down there. There's a roadblock. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes we need people like that in our spaces and our corners, Each one teach one, and that's how we're going to go. We don't always know, We are all students in life and we are all teachers in life. Whether or not you can learn something from a baby, you can learn something from a small child, you can learn something from an elderly person, you can learn something from a person that meets you where you are. We're all teachers and we're all students in life. That's how I view it. And back to the state of living in dis-ease. Sometimes it means that there are some certain things about you that needs to be changed. There's certain things that need to be rooted up in order for you to grow and step into a state of flow and fulfillment. So if something is not happening, guys, something needs to be done. And sometimes it's going to be something that hurt you, that you didn't want to hear. It hurt, but it was necessary. Going to the doctor to get something corrected. Sometimes it requires surgery. And for those who have been through surgery, we know that some surgery is very painful. It hurts, After the surgery is done, we still feel the effect. But it's a way of healing us. Sometimes we're hurting being alone, that space of being lonely. We don't want it. But it's that God's way of healing us in that space and time, Healing is different for everybody, depending on where you're at, depending on things that you have been through, But we all understand that we all face some level of discomfort and dis-ease at some point in life, and we might not know how to deal with it. But I'm talking from being in that, quiet zone, that quiet space, and finding out what that moment has to teach you, and the questions that you need to ask yourself, and the answers that you need to listen for. It's essential to our growth, and it's essential to a life worth living. That's it for now, guys. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to say peace and love.